I'd like to start out, though, with the economy, and in fact, I'm really pleased to have with me Chuck Sheketoff. BecauseFactsMatter.org is his website. Chuck is, for many years, when I was doing a local program here on AM 620 KPOJ, was a regular guest. There still is. And he's the executive director, and the founder of the Oregon Center for Public Policy, OCPP.org. But BecauseFactsMatter.org, also his website. Chuck, welcome to the show.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
I woke up to two things this morning. I woke up is probably the wrong word because my flight from Spain arrived at midnight. I had to be here at 5:30. But one was a front page story in today's paper with your picture on it, saying Chuck Sheketoff says tax hikes are good. And the other was the Center for American Progress's Think Progress blog, which is a pretty good news summary. Says business leaders are pressing the Obama administration to enact tax cuts as a way of spurring job growth. The National Federation of Independent Business is pushing for a payroll tax holiday. Chamber of Commerce wants reduction of the corporate capital gains tax and an elimination permanently of the estate tax. And so all the cons are out there running around saying, oh my God, we've got an economic crisis, time to cut taxes. I know from many of our previous conversations that this is not your point of view. But what I thought was so fascinating about what you did here, because we have coming up in Oregon this ballot initiative, another right-wing crank group put on the ballot. Let's roll back tax increases that were put into place by our democratically elected legislature that would help balance the budget of Oregon and actually do something, particularly taxes on, raising the $10 corporate minimum tax and taxes on wealthy individuals. Let's roll back these taxes on millionaires and billionaires. And they've been telling some stories, and you decided to fact-check them. Tell us about this, Chuck.
Yeah, well, our legislature enacted in response to the revenue shortfall that Oregon had, as well as virtually every other state, save maybe North Dakota. Our legislature was facing about $4 billion shortfall out of about a $17 billion budget. Right. And what they did was...
We're sort of a mini California in that regard. And for largely the same reasons, right-wing ballot initiatives.
Well, ballot initiatives, and we have a requirement for a supermajority for bills for raising revenue. They have sort of a double whammy. They have a supermajority to pass a budget, they're a little bit more unique than other states. So in response to the shortfall, the legislature cut about $2 billion in public services. They kept funding certain items and took best advantage of Federal Recovery Act dollars and just other federal funds, matching funds, like in Medicaid. And then they also raised taxes following the advice of Nobel Prize-winning economist Joseph Stiglitz, and now OMB Director Peter Orszag, from a 2001 paper they wrote during the last recession that said states have awful choices. They have to have balanced budgets, and they can either cut public services or raise taxes, and the best course of action is to raise taxes on those with the greatest ability to pay, right, because the money comes out of their savings and out of state spending, and it maintains at what economists call aggregate demand. Basically, right, maintains state
It doesn't reduce demand, and therefore it doesn't slow down the economy.
That's right. Because one of the fallacies of the business community's argument is that the state economy is separate from the rest of the economy, and it's integral, right, to it. And in fact, state economy brings federal dollars into the state spending. Often brings federal, right, dollars into a state economy.
Now, Chuck, I don't want to make this an Oregon story because we're being heard by a national audience right now. What I think is interesting, though, is that what is happening right now in Oregon is identical to what's happening statewide. Much of it's actually being funded by the same people, by not only the same think tanks, but a few of the same wealthy individuals. But they have been promulgating a series of stories much like Ronald Reagan's old story about the welfare queen who drove her Cadillac to pick up her food stamp check or welfare check or whatever it was, and the New York Times spent 6 months looking for this woman and was unable to find her. They've been promulgating a couple of stories, and you decided to do some investigative research.
Right, your first point about it being a part of a national trend is absolutely right. So the legislature enacted it. We're an initiative and a referral state, and the business community, bankers, big businesses, and out-of-state conservative groups, Americans for Prosperity and Freedom Works, gathered signatures to put the measure on the ballot. So in January, we're a vote-by-mail state.
Right, so we're back to Dick Armey and Grover Norquist here.
Right, and in January, we'll vote whether to sustain the legislature's measure. So if you want the tax increases to stay in effect, you vote yes. If you want to cripple the state's economy and hurt public services, you would vote no. And so It is the same groups. Well, here's what they did. We saw a front-page story from a small town, this town on the Oregon-Idaho border called Ontario, Oregon. It's one of the biggest towns over there. And their newspaper had a front-page story about a businessman who had an 30-year irrigation business who was all upset about his taxes going up. That's why he signed the petition to put it on the ballot. He thought he was going to have to move his business to Idaho, which really didn't make sense because his Oregon customers were in Oregon, and he'd still pay taxes on that. Right. And I looked him up, and he was a corporation, but I called him, and I got him out his business with family members, got me his cell phone, and he was out in somebody's field moving pipe. And I said, are you an S corporation or a C corporation? Now, S corporations are corporations. It's an election under the federal tax law where you're allowed to pass through profits to the owners. You have a limited number of shareholders, and and he knew what he was. And he said, I'm an S corporation. And he told me about how his daughters are now in the business, blah, blah, blah.
Chuck, we have just a minute left.
Okay, and I told him he was only going to have to pay $150. He said, I can handle that. And he offered to buy me a beer next time I'm over on the eastern side of the state.
So this guy who's the poster boy of the right wing, because I'm going to have to move out of the state if the taxes go up, he's going to have to pay an extra $150 a year.
That's right. And the business lobby also did it to an owner of an Ethiopian restaurant. They put his picture in their monthly magazine, their quarterly magazine, saying that he was going to feel the pinch. It said he not only is he only going to pay $150 because he's an LLC. He actually told me he's a proud taxpayer, and he never talked to the business lobby who put them in the newspaper, in the magazine.
So once again, we're finding that in order for the right to get their way, they have to tell stories that are lies in order to scare the hell out of average people.
Well, they are trying scare tactics. Their whole campaign here is scare tactics.
Yeah, scare tactic, one after another. Chuck Sheketoff, BecauseFactsMatter.org, great website, and the Oregon Center for Public Policy, the founder and executive director. Chuck, you're doing marvelous work. Thanks again for dropping by with us today.
Thank you, Tom. Glad to visit with you.
And keep it up. I love it when you find these folks who have been hoodwinked, basically, and help them wake it up. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.